James Farr live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. The Conversation Live starts now. And welcome to another episode of The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Coming up today, Rick Cole is in the seat. Rick and I are going to talk about his campaign for Pasadena City Council District 2. But first, we'll check in with our underwriters, and Rick will join us on the other side of the break. And welcome back. Thank you to our friends at Pasadena City College for their generous support of the Conversation Live. So Rick Cole is in the seat today. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great, James. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. So you're running for City Council here in Pasadena District 2. And after 40 years of public service, you've decided to come back to your hometown where you once served as a council member, former mayor. You've had jobs in city management as a city manager with the city of Santa Monica and Santa Barbara, as well as, I believe, the planning, the control. Let's see.
I'm now Chief Deputy Controller in the City of LA.
Chief Deputy Controller.
And it was Ventura, not Santa Barbara.
Excuse me, we stand corrected. But all of that being said, right,
yes,
that's a long, storied career. And there's a lot of runway here today in this program. We have another 25, almost 30 minutes that we'll be able to unpack. But why did you decide that now is the right time for you to get back involved in politics here in Pasadena?
Well, James, I love this city, and I have I've really been shaped by Pasadena. Growing up here, going to our public schools, seeing the impact of decisions made by school boards and city councils on the shape of the community. As you know, there's a whole history in our city where the city council made redevelopment decisions that relocated thousands of Pasadena residents out of their homes. The freeways came through, and another tens of thousands of folks were actually relocated out of their homes. One of them was Jackie Robinson's family, one of the most famous Americans who grew up here. His mom managed to buy 3 homes in the neighborhood, all of them taken away by government action. A pattern of discrimination in our school decisions that ultimately, when I was in high school, led to a federal court decision ordering our city schools to be desegregated. So Pasadena is in my soul and my blood. And coming back after serving in other cities and being appointed to the Planning Commission because of my experience in city planning, I deeply believe that we need to be making decisions today for 10, 20, and 30 years out. The world has changed, the world is changing. And while Pasadena is a great city with fantastic assets, the Rose Bowl, the Rose Parade, the Norton Simon Museum, JPL, Caltech, you can tick them all off. But San Francisco has a lot of assets. And when you look at how fast and how far San Francisco has fallen in the last 5 years, I think it's a sobering lesson that you can't be complacent, you can't take things for granted. So I think that my experience and my passion and my love for Pasadena can be helpful because we face some serious choices as a city that affect our neighborhoods, that affect our city, but most of all affect our children and the next generation.
Well, we're going to unpack a lot of that in our next half hour, and I want to go a little bit deeper into that. But you know, many folks who watch the Conversation Live follow our coverage of police issues here in the city, and public safety being one of the most paramount issues. But you know, through our lens, we sometimes focus specifically on how the police show up in our community. Overall, I mean, you've been here over many years and you've seen many different police chiefs coming in and out of our department, but is our department doing a good job? Could it be doing better?
Well, there is not a department on the planet, police, library, public works, that couldn't do better.
But I want to keep it on policing, right? Because I know you have a plan and vision for the library here in the city, but I want to focus that on policing though.
So I've written about the city's budget, which is now $1.2 billion, which is kind of a staggering sum. And when I talk to folks at the door, they're astonished that our budget has grown that large. And I wrote about it in Pasadena Now, and one of the points I made is that it isn't so much how much we spend, it's what are we getting for it. So at the last part of the budget, which is over 200 pages, there's 28 pages of performance measures. And so I think we ought to be able transparently to evaluate the answer to your question, how well is the Pasadena Police Department doing? But you can't get that from our current performance measures. For example, it sets as a goal a 3% reduction in our crime rate. But because the FBI has recently changed the manner of calculating the crime rate, there actually isn't any benchmark as to what a 3% would be, from what to what. And there's no tracking of that. And the other performance measures for the police department are largely activities. We have so many hours devoted to this, so many. That's not results. So I think not just for our police department, but for all of our departments, the folks in Pasadena deserve to know, what are your performance measures? Are they measuring the right thing? Are they accurate? And are you producing results? And I don't think we have that discipline. I think that's fairly common in the public sector, but I've spent 30 years of my life trying to sharpen the focus on performance so we have government that works better and costs less.
Well, let's talk about that, because you know the budget increase this year was an additional 5%, so it's about $105 million for our police department. And I think that speaks more to what you're saying, is what are we getting for that, right? And throughout your history, you know, folks, there's kind of this saying that police chiefs and managers are subjugated to how folks north of the 210 freeway, right, feel, how they're governed, how they're policed. And so what is that plan? Like, is it the council's job to help shape how the department enforces or kind of shows up in public? Because I know we have a charter that doesn't allow you to kind of step into personnel issues, but what should be the role of the council be as it relates to policing here in Pasadena?
It's a great question, and I think I'll be the only candidate in this race who's actually hired 4 police chiefs in my career and overseen greater than $100 million budgets for police departments, and been at countless roll calls, been on ride-alongs with folks who work for the chief that I've hired. So I bring real-world experience with how departments work. What's the role of the council? The role of the council, I think, should be to convene deeper dialogue about what was the Pasadena Way today. I know what it was when the Pasadena Way was formulated by Chief James Roberson. And it's embedded in the concrete right in front of the front door of our police station. How does that apply today to the entire city? I'm very fond of what John Kennedy called One Pasadena. The idea that, that sometimes separating out the Northwest or separating out the wealthier neighborhoods in the South as if we are not one city, we're multiple cities. We have multiple diverse communities within our city, but everyone deserves the same level of feeling safe in their neighborhood. And I think that there are dimensions of that that go both ways. There are dimensions of people being afraid and wanting the police to protect them, and there are dimensions of being worried that the police will victimize them. And those need to be reconciled, and I think the Pasadena Way needs to focus on one Pasadena, that everyone in our community gets equal treatment.
Absolutely. You know, because we could have a whole nother conversation strictly on public safety and policing. So I want to make sure that we honor the time and we allow you some time to get to some of the other
Council
things.
should set benchmarks, and the city manager and the police chief should meet those benchmarks. And the community should be involved, both through the new Police Oversight Commission, the Civilian Commission, but also all of the organizations in our community who can add to the dialogue as partners in public safety, not just as critics of the police department, but as collaborators to make our streets safe. And there are a lot of dimensions to safety that go beyond just who's in a black and white and how many black and whites we have out on patrol.
Okay. Let's talk about District 2. What are your top priorities?
Well, for District 2, there are a number of important pieces. I think the most important is it's made up of neighborhoods. We're not the downtown, we don't have the Rose Bowl. The neighborhoods of North Central Pasadena are unique. My predecessor, Margaret McAustin, or actually I should technically say my successor because I was city council member back before her, did great job on the Washington Boulevard corridor, that business corridor, which I think serves well the surrounding neighborhoods. I don't think we have the same level of, I know we don't have the same level of success on North Lake. North Lake is worse off than it was 30 years ago, even though the city's done now 3 very expensive plans that it has really not effectively implemented. One issue that is a citywide issue, a regional issue, but is particularly concerning in District 2 is the rise of homelessness. We're seeing it not only in our downtown area, but in the neighborhoods themselves. Homelessness is up 10% just this year. There's more than 500 folks who are counted in the February count, but the most important number is more than 300 of them were out on the street, even though the weather was 41 degrees that night. That is a concerning figure. That is the #1 priority, I think, for the city, is to treat the growing level of homelessness as an emergency. And there are a number of dimensions about how to tackle that. I've had a lot of personal and professional experience in what works and what doesn't work. And what doesn't work is treating this as just a part of urban life, right? You know, there's going to be a certain number of homeless people. I don't believe that.
Let me back up, because you talked about the Washington corridor, and then we'll move back into this space of the unhoused.
And I talked about North Lake.
And you talked about North Lake, right?
And so, and also the neighborhoods below the freeway in District 2, I think don't get the same attention as the neighborhoods north of the freeway. I think there's some issues around safety of streets. As I talk to voters, speeding traffic is a huge issue, particularly because a number of the streets in District 2 are through streets like Hill Avenue and Allen Avenue, Orange Grove, Mountain, as well as just the wider streets that people are just racing up and down, putting in danger the lives of folks who live in our neighborhoods. So there's a number of issues that we need to roll up our sleeves and work with the neighbors themselves to help solve. This isn't just something that city government or city hall has a responsibility. We need to collaborate with the business people and property owners on North Lake and on East Washington Boulevard, with the neighborhoods south of the freeway and north of the freeway. Most of our neighborhood groups have kind of stalled post-COVID. Where I live in Bungalow Heaven, the neighborhood association is still a very active, plays a very important role. Some of the others have kind of faded. I think we need to revive them.
Business. You talked about Lake, you talked about the Washington corridor. Pasadena is not known as a city that it's very friendly to opening businesses, permits. Very, very tedious, arduous process. Yes. What is the role of the council and government in helping to support businesses?
You know, on my issues page on my website, supporting local business is actually #1. Why is that? It's not strictly economic, although in fact local businesses employ a disproportionate number of people who live in the community, and they support community activities. They're the ones who sponsor the little leagues and the soccer clubs. But the most important thing is that they reflect the unique character of Pasadena. If all of our businesses are generic and corporate and we get everything delivered to our doorstep, we lose a huge part of what makes Pasadena a special place to live. And I believe there's literally an appetite for local business. You look at the Seeds Bakery in my neighborhood, there are lines that form because it's unique. It's not something you're going to get at the supermarket. And that's what we ought to have, as we do again with many of the Armenian-themed businesses along East Washington, that Armenians and non-Armenians benefit from having those choices. So local business, how do we make it easier? First of all, common sense, right? I've spent 20 years managing cities, and we often in the public sector hide behind rules, and rather than use our common sense and try to get people to work together to solve problems, rather than saying, I'm sorry, come back tomorrow. And so I've had practical experience with that. I think that could come in handy. I want to understand why it is that it is so difficult for people to get permits in our city, and sets, again, performance standards of a certain number of days. When I was city manager of Santa Monica, of Ventura, we made a commitment that if you did not get an answer on a project within 6 months, we would give you, and this is for major projects, we would give you all of your fees back. We never had to do that because that set a deadline, and we worked to that deadline. We were able to get things moving quickly through. It doesn't mean that you ignore the rules, but it means you interpret the rules in a way that makes sense. Do you know how many words our zoning code is?
No, I don't.
I measured it, 289,000 words. That's our zoning code. So no wonder it's difficult for local businesses and local residents to navigate. It's time we pare back some of those rules, some of which go back decades and are no longer relevant.
I think I'm going to have to apply that same ruler to the police policy, right? I know it's 900 and some odd pages, but I think I'll actually quantify the number of words. That's an interesting exercise. Looking at the unhoused, right? I mean,
yes.
Excuse me, not the unhoused, but I want to kind of transition into affordable housing, right? Often, our electeds I don't think, are very honest with the public, right? Even if something were approved today, it would take years, possibly even a decade, for a property to come on board. And I know you come online and by the time we go through all the surveys, the construction, the building and all of that. So this problem of we need to build, you said in your public forward-facing messages, you don't want any more of this ugly apartment type, multiplex type.
I think the design absolutely needs to be fixed, and as a member of the Planning Commission, my colleagues and I are on the job to do that, because I think virtually everyone I talk to thinks that we need to improve the design standards of what we're building so it's more livable for the people living there, and so it fits in with the character of our city. I support more housing near transit, but it should create livable neighborhoods that people can walk to a park. And before we fill every single parking lot with housing, we need to be identifying where we're going to put the parks, because if people are going to live without front yards and backyards, they'll need those parks. We need to plant the trees. And if people, the design of the ground floor is huge. If the design of the ground floor is these boxes and canyons and blank walls, people are not going to walk. They're not going to go to the local business. They're going to get in their cars. They're going to create more traffic, create more greenhouse gas emissions, all of that. And there are ways in which we should tackle that. I'm disappointed that it's taken us this long to get our arms around this issue, because it's been clear as day for a long time.
Is it the local government's job or council's job to create affordable housing here in the city?
Well, we certainly are a partner in that. There's state money, there's federal money. There are private developers who are doing it without subsidies. Just recently, a ribbon cutting on just such a project. So I think we should facilitate. Of course, affordable means different things to different people. It has a legal meaning.
Sure.
And for some people, it sounds like, oh, scary, a bunch of people that that don't work and are going to raise hell in my neighborhood are moving in. For other people, it's just being able to afford to rent an apartment or maybe buy a first home. So affordable is kind of an elastic term that isn't always very helpful because people sometimes are talking about different things at the same time. What I think affordability is, the issue for Pasadena transcends just the narrow affordable housing. I think we need all kinds of housing choices for folks. And one of the areas that I think has been neglected is the opportunity for families to buy a first home. In my lifetime, we've gone from 60% home ownership in our city to 60% renter in our city. And for people to be permanently shut out of ownership, I think is a generational mistake. And I think there are ways in which Heritage Partners has some very innovative programs for moderate income home buyers. I think the city should be a catalytic force, and I've advocated for that, and I've laid out some plans of how we can do that affordably ourselves.
We look at our utilities here in the city. Water's going up. How, you know, as everything, I think I saw a corner gas station near my home at $7.29 a gallon, right? Our water bill is expected to increase over the next year. How do we stabilize this? Because as wages, this isn't government's problem with wages, but as cost and price index goes up and cost of living goes up, and then we look at our municipal services, right? Utilities going up. What's the plan for that?
So, James, an ounce of prevention is cheaper than a pound of cure, and that's true of homelessness, that's true about water, that's true about energy. If we wait until we have a deep problem, oh my goodness, we have a drought, oh my goodness, we have homelessness on our street, oh my goodness, we have to meet state mandates on renewable energy, and we then lurch into expensive, often short-sighted responses to those, is going to cost more, and it is costing us more. That's why we need long-term vision. That's what I think is missing in our city, and I don't blame that on the people at City Hall. They're smart people, they're hardworking people. I think that as a city, we need to be thinking about where are we going to be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. That's what I've been taught in my public service career, is that just as you said, it takes years for housing to actually transpire. For us to wean ourselves off of the Colorado River, which is drying up, for us to wean ourselves off of the Sierra snowpack, which had a great year last year, but that was after 15 years of really tough sledding. And if we're going to wean ourselves off of that, we need to be planning now to say, well, how are we going to reduce the price of water next year? No. We need to be thinking about what is water going to cost us 10 and 20 years, and what's the cost-effective way of recycling water and using it for landscaping. It's crazy that we use drinkable water to flush our toilets and to water our lawns, because drinkable water has to meet standards that measure pollutants down to the billionth of a part. And we don't want to put that stuff in our body unless it's that clean. And then we flush our toilet with it, right? That's hellishly expensive. So we built in our country a plumbing system when water was cheap and plentiful and we didn't pay much attention about what was in it. Now we're 100 years later, we need to build a plumbing system that utilizes wastewater, recycles it, recharges our groundwater basin. That's the way to keep water affordable for people in Pasadena.
We're hard up on time, so I'm going to give you a minute to answer this one. Why are you the best candidate for District 2?
Well, that's a decision up for the voters. I think actually they have two good choices. I think my experience, my passion, and my sense that one Pasadena requires us to be thinking about the future, not just of what's happening today in our communities, as urgent and important as that is, but in the context of where we're going as a city. Because previous generations built the public schools, the libraries, planted the trees, built the parks that we enjoy today. What we need to do over the next 10, 20, 30 years is not so much build a lot as to prepare for a different world that's already unfolding. Competition with China, inflation, increased political polarization. All of these things are affecting us today. So why aren't we thinking about how we solve some of these long-term problems? And that involves the whole community in that process. That will be my commitment.
Your website doesn't list any endorsements. Are there any that you've received that you want to share with our audience right now?
We're going to have a bunch of endorsements. We just announced a whole slate of neighborhood, business, and community leaders in District 2. They'll be up on our website shortly.
Okay. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your campaign?
coalforcouncil.com.
coalforcouncil.com. You're watching The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Rick, thanks so much for being here with me today. If you want to read more of my writing, make sure you check out my friends over at the LA Progressive. Until we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, agape.